welcome to episode 26 of the Current Review podcast. Today it's me and David here, and we are going to talk about some recent EV news. It's been a little while since we last did a podcast, so we're getting back into the swing of things. And this week of March 21st, we have some really exciting things going on. We have lots of news, good and bad. We start off with some of the bad, which is Tesla vandalism and everything going on in regards to that company. Lucid CEO stepping down, Peter Rawlinson. Some Rivian news, updates with the R2, and Palo Alto with a Rivian R1S police car, which is pretty sick, and our EV deal of the week, which is going to come of a bit of a surprise, but we're talking massive discounts. And with the tax credit, we're seeing over $15,000 off MSRP on an already not so extremely expensive vehicle. So
tax credit that still exists despite as whatever Trump says.
Correct. Yes. And I think that's really interesting. And I mean, we could touch on that real quickly. And the fact is the tax credit's still here. So buy an electric car and get a tax
as much
credit.
As people were worried about it, it's still there. You can still take advantage of it, and I think you should, Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's an interesting thing, at least when it comes to politics, is I was thinking that the tax credit might get changed. I wasn't like, yeah, it's definitely getting removed. I was just like, it could probably happen. But with politics, it's just like you never really know what happens, and it seems like things are really difficult to change. And
good and bad.
Yeah, right. And like some stuff happens really quickly, like we saw with like the Gulf of Mexico becoming Gulf of America. Like that was quick, day one. But the tax credits are still here, so that's cool for now. And I still think that's really good for automakers in the United States selling their vehicles, and there's lots of them. Hyundai now, Tesla, GM, Ford, lots of American automakers selling their vehicles here, and you get a tax credit for them. So if you're still interested in buying an EV, still buy brand new, get a tax credit. Do you have any?
Haven't been hit by the tariffs quite yet. Yes, I think that's the only other thing that people are a little bit worried about. But I know the auto manufacturers have gotten exemptions for some of the raw materials that are coming from Mexico or Canada. So they've got an exception for now because I think everyone understands the importance of the American auto industry. And already the ball was rolling with more domestic manufacturing happening, like you were mentioning Hyundai and all these other companies. And it's hard to stop a train like that from rolling once it gets going and they break ground on these facilities. So I think still a lot of good, positive things going in that direction. Let's just hope that the market kind of just keeps riding that wave, So yeah, but I do think there's some interesting dynamics going into the first topic about like Tesla and everyone's like how the brand and the public at large think about Tesla, given Elon's involvement with Doge and the government. It's been really surprising, I think. Well, maybe not surprising, but disappointing because people don't know how to separate out like a business that just makes good products, which if you talk to most of them, people, they say Tesla is a good product, right? That's why they bought it. They didn't buy it because of anything to do with Elon. They just bought
Tesla was the first automaker to bring a software-defined vehicle to the United States.
Yes, exactly.
Probably globally.
And it's as simple as that. And you talk to a lot of people and it's like, it's a good product. And there's thousands of great employees, right, that I'm sure disagree with Elon and what he's doing at the government that are putting their heart and soul into these vehicles to make them great. And it's separate from politics. But, at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of people who, I don't know, maybe they don't have much better things to do than to vandalize Teslas because they're angry or they have no better outlet. Or Tesla superchargers as well. Like, I don't know if you've heard, but like now because superchargers are accessible by multiple people and some superchargers are in, great spots. So if you vandalize or take down a supercharger, you're not just affecting Tesla drivers, you're affecting all the EV drivers in the area,
Yeah. And I just like to break this down, just like to think about things in the most fundamental form. Maybe that's like a very engineering way to think about topics, but like, let's just think this. You have a CEO who's CEO of Tesla. He's also CEO of several other companies and working in the government. Bandwidth and influence on that company is probably pretty limited just due to the constraints of time. Then you have a supercharger, which is a product made not by Elon Musk, by a bunch of engineers, contractors, people, electricians, a wide range of people, that this product was put in place and serves a purpose of people who bought Teslas or other EVs in the past or now. That doesn't really matter. The point is, this thing is so far disconnected to Elon Musk that it's just so ridiculous that someone would think to vandalize that would make any statement, not to mention the moral qualms of vandalizing other people's properties. And same thing with cars too. It's like, even regardless, I don't even care if someone bought the car new or used. I don't even care if someone bought the car new because of Elon Musk or whatever. It's just so ridiculous to think that vandalizing someone's property actually, I mean, I get the idea that someone's going to try to make a statement, but it's just so absolutely ridiculous because you're screwing over someone else. And not only that, is like, just think of all the hassle you'd have to go through. So someone keys your Tesla, your wife has a Tesla, I have a Tesla, and it's just like, then you have to go through insurance. Then you have to go through all this. And you probably talk to the clown who does that. And they're like, oh, well, they got insurance, whatever. It's like, it's not this simple. And still at the end of the day, someone is netting negative and you're just kind of netting zero because there's really no benefit.
And Elon is not affected at all. He doesn't care. It doesn't affect him. If you're upset at him by vandalizing other people's Teslas, you're not impacting him at all. So, I mean, mission not accomplished, you know?
And and still, like, the other thing is, this is just one angle of attack we can look at. The other angle of attack is it's 130,000 people working at Tesla. Elon Musk is one of them. I guarantee you there was someone who was more right-wing making your GM product than there was anyone at Tesla. Or, I mean, whatever. I mean, this is just like, if you're trying to disassociate yourself from what right-wing notions or ideologies, it's like someone on the assembly line making any car was probably way more right-wing. And I have friends who work at BMW in Greenville, South Carolina, who say heard some crazy stuff on the assembly line, as is probably other people at GM in these random factories. It's like, it's just the fact that there's going to be people with right-wing ideologies and left-wing ideologies, and someone making your car is probably going to have some sort of ideology, let alone talk about other automakers with even more controversial governments overseeing their operations. Like, we talk about Chinese EVs, they're great. China has a lot of concerns when it comes to human rights that we could be looking at. So it's just like, I don't know. I just see the product as, this is a device made by a variety of people, and it's pretty awesome that we can see a really good car come to fruition from the hard work of lots of engineers. Maybe I'm just rambling too much, but that's just my thoughts. I think, no,
I
still
agree.
like Teslas. I think they're cool. I recently drove the Model 3 Performance. It's a great car, but I just see it as a car, and I appreciate the engineering. I don't think of it as some symbol of right-wing politics.
Yeah, or anything like that. I mean, a lot of people disagreed with like the Koch brothers, right? And Koch Industries supports so many things that people buy on a day-to-day basis. So just because you don't like what they're doing and who they're supporting politically, are you going to stop buying any product that has Koch Industries associated with it? Like, no, there's not possible, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, like, you have to disassociate from, you know, the individual and what they're doing, and all the other great people that are at the end of the day providing you a product or service that is providing a direct use, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I agree. I mean, it's interesting. It would be really, really interesting to see how many of those protesters or vandalizers or whoever are posting on X, formerly known as Twitter, right? All of their exploits to be like, look at me, I'm fighting the man who's now known as Elon. But again, you know, Elon also controls X. So it's one of those things where, look, yes, he's very powerful. He's involved in a lot of things, but like there are a lot of things that he's involved in that are providing just like a decent service at the end of the day and like find some other way or other means to sort of act out against. And that's probably the best is using your democratic rights and voting. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, and I will also say, like with Elon Musk, I think when it comes to like CEOs that have like a great, like, because you want, I think as a CEO of a company, you have a service to be a good image for your company. And I think when we look at like companies like Apple in particular, when we see like Tim Cook, who I think I've read a lot about him, I think just when you think of him as like a figure, he just seems like a very stoic person, doesn't really engage in politics, doesn't really engage in lots of narrative at all. Like I think he has probably not that many posts on social media. And it's like, I think that's kind of cool because I think as like CEO, I really appreciate those who are like very quiet and kind of appreciate their privacy and not being the center of everything. And like, I guess when you buy an Apple product, you don't really think of like this is a representation of Tim Cook. Probably 50% of the people you talk with probably won't even know who Tim Cook is.
And it's more of a reflection of the actual people that worked on the thing,
mm-hmm.
right? And they're like the unknown faces, all the engineers and the designers behind the scenes that you're not interviewing and asking what their political views are before you go buy the next, M4 Mini or M4 MacBook Air that just got released.
Mm-hmm.
You're just enjoying the product, and that's what they're focused on. So I think it makes sense to focus on those things first, and then deal with your anxieties or frustrations with the government in other more appropriate ways.
Yeah. And keying someone's Tesla is not going to help anyone. And I think the thing is that a lot of people need to consider is Teslas have Sentry mode, and it will probably get a good picture of your face. And you probably don't want to face all the legal consequences. That would be a great tort lawsuit with lots of punitive damages, I can imagine. And I guess moving on from that out, but now we're moving on to Lucid CEO stepping down. This is really interesting. So there's like a lot of rumors floating. As someone who worked at Lucid for a brief period and who has friends at Lucid, these rumors are probably not all accurate. And, there's personal reasons why someone would want to not continue being the CEO of a company. So I think we should probably all take a lot of these rumors with a grain of salt. And yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
No, I think, you would explain to me that it could be, we don't know, right? And
mm-hmm.
Was Peter Rawlinson has his own reasons potentially for leaving, and only a few number of people actually know the full story, which is fine. But I had seen a lot of the articles suggesting that there was some turmoil going on, some issues, especially since in terms of timing and the Gravity SUV just sort of being put out there and put into production, that there were some concerns about that performance, the performance of that launch, the vehicle, etc. But I think, Andrew, you pointed out a good possibility that it could be like very personal. He is a little bit on the older side. And actually, if you think about it, if things are actually going well, they're about to go into the manufacturing hell that Tesla went through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Elon notoriously did sleep in the factory on the factory floor for many nights and across many years to sort of work through those issues. Rivian's going through that right now as they're on the verge of releasing the R2, the Model Y fighter, and it'll be really stressful. It'll be stressful for everybody there, and
mm-hmm.
very, very much so for people at the top. And I think Peter's on the older side, and maybe he just wants to sort of move on and enjoy life, right? And let someone else take the reins, because I will say, like a CEO and a leader that gets you to this point of where Lucid is, and I think they've done a great job, is a very, very different type of leader that you need to sort of get through manufacturing hell.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think Peter did a great job of getting Lucid to the point that Lucid's at now, because many companies have failed just to get to anywhere near Lucid, where they are now. And I think that's the thing, because like we see, if we could kind of like model this with Tesla, it's like Lucid's probably like a 2016-ish Tesla Model X coming out, like that stage. And it's like, there's going to be so much more to come in the next few years, especially with the midsize project. And yeah, it's going to be very chaotic and stressful for Lucid in this next period. And you probably need someone to be able to deal with that all in a very positive way, because it's going to be difficult. And yeah, it's like Tesla almost went bankrupt at that period. So this is going to be a very make or break time for Lucid. And, those are just my thoughts.
Yeah. And there's so much that's going on, especially in the manufacturing space. So I don't envy, the folks that have to face some of those challenges, but I am rooting for them, because I do think we still need more alternatives, right, to right what's existing right now with Tesla. And like, again, Tesla does make a great product, but I'm a big believer in consumer choice and having lots of consumer choice. So the more people that are out there putting out decent products that can compete, the better. And I think Lucid's it's on the right path. It's following a very similar playbook. So hopefully they can go and survive to the point where they're hitting numbers that make sense on a larger scale.
Yeah. I'm excited for the day when we will have. I mean, we already have a bunch of great electric crossovers. Well, sorry, let me change that. We have a bunch of electric crossovers on the market. Not great, because I don't think all of them are great. Because we got a few, like the Toyota BZ4X and Subaru Solterra, which are affordable, but they're objectively not good cars that you should not buy. And and I think that's the thing. So we have like a bunch of like decent and great options. I think Model Y is a great car. Kia EV6, Hyundai Ioniq 5. They've had some issues though recently with their onboard charging unit, but nevertheless, good cars, solid charging, all that stuff. And it would be nice to see a few more automakers hit the market, like once we get R2 out, and especially the Lucid midsize. So that's gonna be really exciting.
I know I've talked about this before on previous episodes of this podcast, but I think the way that Volkswagen is partnering up with Rivian and Scout and their platform strategy as a software provider, I think it would be smart for incumbent large manufacturer to do the same with Lucid. I could see a Mercedes or an Audi partnering up with Lucid on like a brand and a collaboration, because again, Lucid's got the advantage of being sort of tech first with a clean sheet design and sort of a more modern approach to the way vehicles should be. And I think all these other incumbent manufacturers are struggling because they're coming from traditional ways of making cars and designing cars, and it's falling short, I think, when it comes to the quality sometimes, especially when it comes to like the frunk, right? Like some of these I don't know if anyone's seen the new Daytona Charger, but like the frunk has a lot to be desired.
No, that's an interesting car. And interestingly, that is a car that I would be really interested in leasing. This is like totally an aside, and we didn't even have this planned for discussion on the podcast. But those are not selling. Like, they're just not selling that well. It's a weird. I mean, it's just kind of expensive, right? Because if it was like $45K, I could see a really good case, or even 50,000. But like $60,000 to $80,000 range for that car.
And performance wise, it's not necessarily that much better than like a Model 3 performance, right? Like
in a Model 3 performance, it's $47,500 with the tax credit. And the Model 3 performance
has faster.
Yeah. So, and that's a case, because you could like, so someone would say, oh yeah, this is like cool muscle car or whatever. And like, don't get me wrong, it is. I think it's visually a really cool vehicle, and I want to drive one really bad, because I think I would just like to experience one. But in terms of what I've heard, like throttle mapping, all this stuff, it seems kind of like a novice approach on an EV. And that's the thing. So once you get the Scat Pack or whatever, that's around $80,000. Model 3 Performance, all destination fees included, and the tax credits under 50. And the Model 3 Performance has more range. It has a little less horsepower, but still quicker because it's way less. I think it only Model 3 Performance is around 4,200, 4,000, I believe. Whereas the Scat Pack's like 5,600. It's crazy. It should not weigh that much. And so you got all these things, and it's like, I just don't really see the case for buying one other than it looks cool.
It looks cool. I mean, that's one where if I think about it, it's like a large vehicle, right? Wide and long.
It's huge. Yeah.
That's another opportunity where like they could have partnered up with Lucid and maybe scrapped some of the other stuff that was making it more expensive, right? Because Lucid, you could argue, has like the quickest vehicle out there in production, like by far, right? The Sapphire Air. So could you imagine? Like I could imagine like a Daytona that's basically a Sapphire Air underneath, maybe with like less battery packs and a bunch of other stuff stripped back, but you could probably get it down to 80 and have it like super quick, right?
Yeah. And I think I'll actually pull this up in 1 second, but I think the interesting thing is, and I think that's a great point. Like imagine if, I mean, obviously we're probably oversimplifying this to some degree. But could you imagine if Stellantis worked with Lucid to produce this vehicle? I mean, it would have been, because it's the Lucid's platform is just miles more advanced. And if I'll present my screen here. Actually, let's go Dodge Daytona EV. So this is a Dodge Daytona EV dimensions. It's 206 inches long. Keep in mind, it's a two-door car. It's 206 inches long, which is longer than a Rivian R1S. Insane.
That's crazy.
About 80 inches wide and 59 inches tall. And then the Lucid Air is 196 inches long. So it's 10 inches shorter. And we're going to use 76 because the 79, I think, is for the Sapphire. But 76 inches wide, 55 inches tall. So it's like the Lucid's just smaller all around and has way more interior volume and space and everything else. It's like, it's crazy.
It's a very similar car physically, right? In terms of dimensions. And I could see a world where they take the Lucid platform, they strip a couple things back, right? Like you probably don't need the huge battery pack that thing has, right?
Yeah, just put a pure battery pack in.
Yeah, and then
80 kilowatt hours, 84.
And then change what's on top and strip that so it's, very, very basic. You get it down to 80 and then you probably have a better vehicle than the Daytona, But anyways,
that's probably a question for a lot of legacy automakers to ask themselves is they should probably be looking, because we see a lot more partnerships in China as opposed to here. But I think there should definitely be some conversations people should ask about, hey, is it like do a cost benefit analysis? Is it gonna be easier to do this on our own, or we work with a startup? So
there you
that's
go.
Interesting.
All right.
And
speaking of moving on to, I think that the Rivians, right? Rivian's going to R2 production dies are done, and they've got the initial body panels out, right? Which is pretty exciting. Yeah.
So are they still on track for 2026 production?
I believe that's what they're shooting for still. Okay. Yes, 2026 production. But I wouldn't be surprised if, like, similar to even the R1 release, right? The first ones went out to employees, right? Super early, and it took them still a long time to ramp up production. So I could still see that happening as they technically hit the 2026 deadline, but not in any meaningful way. It probably still takes another 6 to 8 months before it starts to hit customers that are a little bit further away from the factory and that sort of thing. But it's exciting to see. I'm rooting for them because we need more alternatives to Tesla, I think I think from everything I've heard, they've put a lot into and that's riding on this vehicle in terms of like the long-term future of the company, because it's their first mass market one, right?
Yep.
And it's almost legitimately their Model 3 moment, you know? And everyone, I think, everyone knows the Tesla story, whereas once the Model 3s came out, the volumes really started going way up, and they started going on this track where they were going towards profitability. And I think Rivian actually has the advantage of being second, and I'm assuming is learning a lot from Tesla, because I think before the Model 3 came out, Tesla wasn't even profitable at all, were they?
No, I
And
don't think they were.
Rivian did post a profitable quarter at least, right?
Wow.
So they're
And
already
that's
in
good.
better
They're
shape.
doing it this early along. So
Exactly. They're ahead of the game, and have, from my understanding, have been focusing a lot on reducing material costs and assembly costs, just like
yes.
rethinking everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to back up that point, I have a story coming out in Inside EVs pretty soon. I'm still finishing up writing it, but I spoke with two people from Rivian on their zonal architectures,
Yeah.
and this was actually really cool. So basically talking about how instead of having like 12 separate ECUs, we'll maybe have like 6 or something like that, and we'll just have ECUs in like sections of the vehicle. So maybe it'll just have one centralized ECU for like the front area of the vehicle, like front fender area and all this stuff. And it's just really cool how they're rethinking all this manufacturing and cutting down all this wiring in the cars. And consequentially, that also improves manufacturability. So it's really cool that you can make these changes that will probably benefit the user, but also cheapen the manufacturing costs, which is really cool. So,
and give them a pathway to profitability faster, which is important, especially if you want them
100%.
to survive. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, that's the thing. I think Rivian's a really exciting car company, and I would love to. I think it's a really awesome car. So yeah. And
Can't
I
wait
think
to
that's
test drive an R2.
yes, that's gonna be exciting. And I think honestly, given the hype for the Rivian R2, and there's even people I know who like aren't even into EVs, and they're like, "What's that like cool new Rivian coming out?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're talking about the R3," and it's like, yeah, it's probably gonna be a while before it's out. But it's cool that it's getting a lot of like non-EV people into EVs, so that's exciting. And I think also it's like the Rivian R2, I would assume is probably gonna be like one of those EVs where it's gonna hold on to its value for like the first maybe year, just due to the sheer hype in it. So we'll see about resale values in the near time. So it may not be a ridiculous car to buy, drive around for 6 months and then sell if you have a reservation.
I do. So, I'll let you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exciting. And now on to our final portion of the episode, which is our EV deal of the week. And this is an exciting one. Well, maybe not exciting in terms of looks, but exciting in terms of performance and value. So what we have here is basically with the upcoming Model Y, or it's actually on the road now, but the new Model Y coming out, Tesla's really discounting the older ones. And we're seeing like really insane discounts, like to the degree of, oh, look at this. We can right now get a brand new Model Y Performance with a $7,700 price cut.
Wow.
And even including taxes and fees for North Carolina, like all taxes, destination fee, order fee, all this stuff, you can walk out the door for $39,600.
That's crazy. Under 40K.
Which is under 40K for a true performance SUV. That's insane. With track mode, everything.
That's awesome. I if we didn't already have one, I'd say we got to go look at this.
Yeah, and I think obviously I think there's still some qualms I have about the Model Y. Specifically, like it's more with the performance and these 21-inch wheels. They look awesome. I agree. But they the tires will not last a long time just because they're like 21-inch wheels and they're very expensive to replace. So just something to consider. as opposed to buying like a rear wheel drive or all wheel drive with the 19-inch wheels. And the suspension is really stiff. That's just the thing with performance, or I mean, even any pretty much old gen Model Y or Model 3 is the suspension will be very stiff and it does not deliver the smoothest ride. But it's more of like a sports SUV, I'd like to think of it. But yeah, so those are two things: ride quality, and it's gonna eat through tires. But like, it's also $40,000 for a above 500 horsepower electric SUV. So
it's almost like a soccer mom family car that can go 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds.
yeah,
Who doesn't want that?
no, yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I think it's like pretty. If for someone interested in the market, it's like you can't even get a new Mach-E for that price.
Yeah.
So,
I
something
think,
to consider.
objectively, if you look at the numbers, the Tesla Model Ys are a really good deal. Again, you got to separate how you feel about Elon and just appreciate the quality of product that's out there and the prices that they can put them out there at. And we'll see. I mean, I think also we haven't talked about it, but the used car market. I mean, Tesla values already have been depressed a little bit because of people's perspective and feelings towards Elon, and the Juniper is coming out in June.
Yes.
So I think in the next couple of months, you'll see a lot of used Model Ys hit the market, because you might see a lot of existing Model Y owners want to upgrade to the Juniper. And so I think you'll see a lot of really good deals on Model Ys coming just in general in the next couple of months. So
yeah. And there's still like tons of really just awesome deals across the board. Like we're talking like early Jaguar I-Paces for under 20K now, which is, I think, a pretty good option. Not sure about like long-term reliability on all the like little stuff like air suspension, all that, but like still fundamentally good car, 20K. And Nissan Aria, as usual, that one's, I've seen the values actually spike up a little bit, which is interesting. So maybe there were a bunch of off lease and now prices are kind of like resuscitating a little bit. So that was interesting. And same thing with the Volvo C40 Recharge. So that car values were really cheap for a while, like under 25, and now they're kind of like 28, 30, which is interesting. So I'm thinking maybe that could have to do something with like Hertz just got rid of a bunch at a certain time, and now obviously they're not getting rid of it anymore, and that alone would lessen the inventory now. So there's lots of interesting trends. So always be sure to look out. And when Hertz and all these companies do drop off a bunch of vehicles, the values will obviously come down for a short period and then they'll kind of bounce back up. So definitely pretty interesting trends to see. But I think right now, new Model Y, it's like, yeah, if you can get over, if you just view as a car and not as a symbol of the CEO of the company, it's like, it's under $40,000 with taxes and fees. So that's
just a
awesome.
good deal. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, it was fun. It's been a while, and I'm glad that we got a chance to sort of go through some of the more interesting recent news. And yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Definitely. And we have an exciting episode next or tomorrow. So that will go up in maybe like a week or so. So we'll keep everyone posted on who this exciting guest is. And till then, thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.